Welcome to Art Work Play Podcast, a podcast for art students and full-time fundraisers.
I'm beginning more and more to think about the podcast as just like long-form social media. Like I think it's as a medium, there's like this potential for there to be like a research practice, for there to be creative interventions with sound, but it does seem like often the stuff that I'm most interested in is just people talking about things they have opinions about, which is basically what social media is.
Right. Well, I feel so uncomfortable with like I mean, not uncomfortable per se, but like sort of adverse to the posting, the sort of, what is it? When you just repost something because you like feel strongly about the politics, but it's just like I guess it's what some people say virtue signaling, but
or the bubble, social media bubble.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a way to take those topics that you see like posted about, but you're not sure if you're going to be adding anything by just reposting it to the same crew that's already seeing it in that social media bubble. So perhaps, this is the alternative, or is this the alternative? Maybe
I don't know.
We'll see. Tune in for the next 25 episodes where we'll answer that question. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to begin with an epilogue from friend of the studio, BFA Berardi.
Woo!
Which I think it was definitely you two who got me into Berardi. I think you may even have brought it back from. This was originally your copy, and then I bought you a replacement copy.
But it wasn't actually our copy. I think it was our professor's copy that we borrowed. Ashley Scarlett, shout out, now professor, tenure track at OCAD.
She's moving up in the world, but she was the best, our favorite professor at our art school, which is going to be the topic of this.
She was an art school professor. She had that lying around, and we lent you the copy. Then you bought us a new copy, which we then gave to her or something. Anyway, we have a copy currently sitting on our shelf as well that wasn't the original. So. Anyway, please.
That's the fetching title, The Uprising on Poetry and Finance, which, and it's like a very aesthetic object, but then it also, I think I talked about Berardi a couple of times in previous episodes because I do think that rhetorically he's so interesting. And then, I don't know, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that like a lot of the discussion surrounding artificial intelligence right now and job automation, this seems to presage it in the sense that contemporary critics are talking about how the people who are behind AI, for instance, have a lot of like libertine allegiances, and they have like they're kind of doing this Silicon Valley kind of futurist notion. Did I say libertine again instead of libertarian?
Yeah,
but I
didn't catch it.
I didn't even notice now. So you've just infected us with your word.
Awesome. But basically, he's like you can't work against certain technologies. And I forget, man. Maybe you guys remember, but he's like the ways as technology ramifies. There's some swords that can't be turned into plowshares, and some people are saying now that artificial intelligence is one of those things. And
what do you mean by what do you mean by that?
Which part?
The plowshares part. I don't. What's that?
Oh well, there's just before your time, there was a musician called Michael Jackson, and he said that we need to turn our swords into plowshares. But the analogy is just kind of like technologies can be misused and put to a purpose opposite to their design. And it seems like Berardi is arguing that with contemporary technology, the way that it controls the swarm and the way it insists upon normative capitalist values, that there's no way to push back, to use that technology to push back.
Dismantling the master's house with the master's tools.
Yeah, which I guess is also an old metaphor, but I don't know. There's something evocative about Berardi, and then kind of like a post epilogue at this point. I wanted to read into the show to kind of like set the stage for some of the things we're going to talk about today. I am not actually sure what I am talking about when I say the word art. You aren't either. Nobody is exactly. Yet it seems that in a recent poll, 24 to 25% of young German people interviewed by journalists answered the question, "What do you want to do when you're an adult?" by stating that they wanted to be artists. What are they picturing? What do they think being an artist means exactly? Are they thinking about the rich possibilities that the art market offers? Well, maybe, but I don't think so. I think that they are saying that they want to be artists because they feel that being an artist means to escape a future of sadness, to escape a future of precariousness as sadness. They are thinking, well, precariousness and sadness can become something different, something not so sad, not so precarious. If they withdraw their faith, if they withdraw from the expectations a capitalist future can offer. I don't want to expect anything from the future. So I start my future as an artist. Which do it.
Do you think that that's sort of saying that the people who want to be artists nowadays are sort of like, oh, if I'm going to be starving, I might as well be a starving artist?
That seems like one thing that's true. I think that what Berardi is saying, and then this other article that we want to talk about, could you guys tell if it was Gallagher or Newsinger who wrote the article?
No, I could not tell.
I could
confusing.
Not
tell who's posting, who's like the one. Maybe if we reread that last paragraph, because it says like he kind of the author gives like, I lecture at this thing. You could like do a deep Google or something and like figure out which of the two names are on the faculty list.
I'm 80% sure it's Newsinger. Like I just based on precisely the inductive stuff that you're saying. Or, but he taking the lead from Graeber, who introduces the theory of bullshit jobs. This person, who I think is Newsinger, talks about creative jobs as bullshit jobs. And I think,
or certainly, a specific new kind, or the idea of the creative class, the emergence.
That's an important thing. Well, he talks a lot about the cultural industries or cultural workers, and I think while he doesn't underscore that is certainly that turn away from identifying people who produce culture, even trying to define it becomes a struggle, because we think about artists as cultural laborers, but cultural work or cultural production or creative classers has also been appropriated and absorbed by institutions like universities and granting agencies, by government, and then it's used by activists as well. But it does frame the worker the artist in a very particular light. But I think one of the things that Newsinger is talking about that article, and that Berardi is talking about, and even in that reading in the Art and Labor podcast that we spoke about in previous weeks, this emphasis on autonomy is, I think, pretty fundamental. So I don't think that they're saying I'm going to be. I don't think Berardi's saying anyway, I'm going to be precarious, therefore let me be precarious with autonomy. I think it is the non-alienated labor, the autonomy and the perceived freedom of art as work that is drawing, especially young people. There's a really good article called White Goods, Red Goods that basically, it's by a Canadian writer and talks about the Canadian granting system. And the argument is basically kind of like, without the fodder of young artists who will inevitably burn out, the art system would belly flop. So,
truth.
And I've seen it because I'm old, right? And I've seen like all the people who started making music in their 20s who just stopped. And I did creative writing, and you see the people who like would not sleep to write and who would build their whole lives around writing, and now they teach paragraph development in college, you know.
It's like your ability to continue working in a creative field is dependent on whether or not you can somehow get funding to work, to do your projects, or and it seems like it's a pretty marginal percentage of people who are able to sustain that over a longer period of time. Like that's something that you especially notice when you go to school in the arts, and like you sort of start with this cohort of classmates, and then a year out from school, or even more so 2 years out from school, people are just like have the people who are still involved in the arts as, I would say, less than 10% for sure.
Yeah, they definitely, like, I remember a class specifically where like our professor was trying to gear us into the idea that 10% of you in this class will still be practicing in 10 years. And that itself is a victory. And not even to be, all the other things that specifically the contemporary art market kind of like throws at the arts culture as like what success is, like being represented by a gallery, or like having it, like exhibiting many shows or something, or like touring. So, like just being, they emphasize in art school just practicing at all, like even if you're not selling, not showing, that itself is a victory. which was really like, you're talking to a class of like 30 21-year-olds who are all painting students,
and they have it so just
hanging out the nose. But yeah, sorry, keep going.
Well, that state of just practicing it all could either mean that you're working another job that has varying degrees of relevancy to your wider practice, maybe has none at all, or maybe it's something that's in a similar field as your practice, or you teaching the things that you are also doing in your art practice.
Which is the case for all three of us.
Yeah, indeed. And then also that you are writing grants, that you're applying for funding in whatever ways. So like being still involved in the arts, being part of that like marginal 10% or whatever, means that you are doing one of these sort of like, a lot of your time is spent doing this like bullshit jobs, as it's called by David Graeber, and in the article that we were reading this week, where a lot of your time is taken up by bureaucracy, by paperwork, by at best doing writing about your practice, and then, but usually it's much more sort of like peripheral, sort of like grant reporting, budgeting, that sort of like more administrative tasks.
Which in turn, go ahead.
No, you.
Or just thinking like, which in turn, like that sort of, even though like the, Canada with its granting system is set apart and produces fosters a very different art than the United States because of its granting system, which is great that it's there. It's still like privileges, if not just the children of rich parents who can afford to, help the kids with their rent when they don't have art shows or not selling out their paintings or whatever, that privileges like the children of the managerial class, who are very used to filling out forms and, accounting and like keeping receipts or whatever, which is, where I feel like that I fall into the category of the child of managers.
I think that you make a good point, that, and it can't be restated enough. And it's, I think, in a certain sense, and in a very reductive sense, these themes are like central to like the thesis of our entire podcast, and some of our work is like, there is like so much like hard class ideology built into even the conception of art making, that, like Mark says about ideology, you're doing it and you don't know you're doing it. And the orientation of self-branding and social media and of universities and of granting systems, all towards market viability and market impact on the one hand, and on the other hand, towards production values and toward coherence for a very broad audience. All of these things have a very charged class orientation to them. Their commitment to profit making, to being measurable, and then on the other hand, the relative inaccessibility. Matt Dryhurst had a really interesting point, or a really interesting tweet this week, where he was like, I think it was him, or maybe he was reposting, but something to the effect of, you live in New York for 10 years and you begin by just being in awe of these people who have stayed on their grind so long that they've managed to rise in their fields, and then you get to know them, and to a person, each of them comes from money. And it's funny, but it's not even worth a laugh, because it's just like, yup.
Yeah. And it's sort of it's even less for like what an art education prepares you for is even less than just like the capitalist vision of art that is like market oriented. It's more just I think art school just prepares you to be this like sort of like secondary or tertiary benefit for capitalists and developers and corporations, where either you're a tool for gentrification to happen for the most part. I think is especially what the sort of like emerging goal of Ontario College of Art and Design, where we went to school, is to both be a sort of an agent that is in line with developers, and then producing citizens in the artists who are going to be, by no fault of their own, like sort of reproducing gentrification in different ways.
It's in that article, Red Good, White Goods, talks about that, how market speculation is literally, in some instances, based upon tracking the neighborhoods that artists move to. I also think it's interesting that your shared work in Tough Guy Mountain was so fascinated with development in that way. But is in a certain sense, maybe it's like talking back to that orientation toward gentrification that you were experiencing. Was there something specific about development that you were encountering there, or is it a dot that you're connecting in retrospect?
I see it. Well, we did our first art project we ever worked on was with the no longer existing OCAD student gallery.
That's where my first show was too.
Yeah. Whoa. And Caroline McFarlane and Vanessa Nichols did were really awesome people for like sort of getting people's art careers started.
The curators at the gallery who were working there.
But the one when we got a project there in 2013, it was already slated to be demolished and replaced by a condo. The gallery was right next to the university, the art school that we were attending, and it's now been fully replaced by this new condo development, whose value is no doubt sort of like completely anchored upon both being downtown, but then also being by this iconic OCAD building, which is the sort of like cow on stilts. And
in the years preceding the actual building of the condo, but when it was still like it had been the land had been sold, it was the parking lot and gallery had been slated for demolition. It triggered a lot of sort of gentrification of the park, which I feel like we talked about this in a previous episode, but maybe I'm just imagining it. But like the park that was next to the school.
We mostly talked about piss in the last episode. That was the one Carol was on.
Okay, well, I'm safe then. Yeah, like that completely changed. This one condo triggered like this one condo triggered a bunch of events in the area that made it less friendly to the original inhabitants, which included a homeless population, a large number of capped rent buildings, and artist housing. I know because I did the census reporting in for that area,
and we lived
there as well. So it's like
we got evicted,
and we also got evicted in the same square radius.
And interestingly, also replaced with boutique artist studios.
Yes, the place that we lived and lived and worked out of in a capped rent sort of situation. We were evicted, and later that space was turned into boutique art studios. But yeah, and we were the ones in 2013 who were creating an exhibit about the selling condos, a condo showroom in the art gallery that would later be demolished, and also with that the advent of that demolished our ability to live in downtown Toronto.
We were
really sad.
We were selling people the dream of a condo maximum, and in the end all they got was a condominium.
Okay.
Can we read this press release from OCAD now?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's from the beginning of the month. Today, the government headline. OCAD University receives approval to grant degrees for the jobs of tomorrow.
You got that right.
Today, the government of Ontario announced changes to the OCAD University Act that will reduce red tape, administrative burden, and save money while allowing OCAD-U the ability to offer a full range of university-level degrees for the jobs of tomorrow. Until now, legislation limited the types of degrees that OCAD University could offer. To onboard new degrees that would respond to labor market demands, OCAD University expended thousands of hours in staff time and significant amounts of money through a tedious administrative process. This is their own press release, and they're self-owning themselves. We are very pleased with the Ontario government's decision to allow for full degree granting authority at OCAD University, said Dr. Sarah Diamond, President and Vice Chancellor, OCAD University. The change will allow us to reduce red tape and continue to modernize art and design education to respond to a changing labor market. As a result, OCAD University will be even more of a driving force in the economy by supplying what fuels innovation, career-ready workers who make jobs as well as take them. As Ontario's only creative university, OCAD-U trains students in areas that are helping close the skills gap in a variety of sectors, including manufacturing, automotive finance, creative industries, and technology. 94% of OCAD-U students find jobs after graduation, and more than 80% of graduates will operate their own business or work as entrepreneurs.
Which because that really just means that that's just the cost of living in Toronto that's forcing them to get any job that they can other than the rich kids. And so entrepreneurs here is code word for freelancers with no dental or benefits.
Wait, one more paragraph. The skills required for art and design professions are in constant evolution. With this latest announcement, OCAD-U will now be able to offer a breadth of university-level degrees relevant to contemporary knowledge in the fields of art and design. These changes will allow OCAD-U to continue and to support Ontario students and compete on the world stage. So that that's just some deal that they cut with the Ford government of Ontario to just be like, hey, you don't care if we make up new degrees Bachelor of Finger Painting, or no, it would be even worse than that. It'd be Bachelor of Financial Design.
I don't know. For me, John, part of what you're saying about the self-owning is. As soon as you start hearing this idiom of progress, that sort of lyricism around modernizing, that to me is for some reason, I'm shocked that it doesn't send up flags for even the audience for whom that would be designed, and perhaps it's a bit kind of ivory tower of me. But I just think, what does modernizing mean in this context? What like
perhaps it actually means hiring more admin, even though they're talking about like getting rid of red tape, because let's face it, OCAD loves administration.
That is hilarious to me, because it's the same fucking thing at the colleges where we've gone out on strike and there's no money, but like statistically and without much trouble you can track like not just anecdotally, also anecdotally, but statistically, you can track the growth of administrative jobs, especially amongst the professional managerial classes, and you can watch their salaries grow and far outstripping inflation, whereas our salaries literally stagnate.
It's much more lucrative to be an OCAD like an OCAD admin than an OCAD teacher, because most of the OCAD like instructors are just sessionals who are screwed over,
or tenure track employees who were grandfathered into the to the tenure system without the like degrees that would be required of current sessional faculties who were trying to get on the tenure track, because there was a point at which the Ontario College of Art and Design switched from a college to like an accredited university, blah, blah, blah. So people who were working there already, which is fair, were able to become university professors and receive tenure, but they're not now the sessionals who are trying to make start their careers are sort of like faced with like a lot of challenges.
And very good instructors too. Like the people that most influenced my experience at OCAD were sessional instructors who didn't know if they could go back.
People on 2-year contracts.
People who like no longer work there because of this bullshit. And it's like, it's when they're up against like a bunch of people who have tenure who haven't been like practicing for over 10 years and have very little understanding of like contemporary art at that point.
But it's more so that wouldn't be so much
that's not so much a problem
if there wasn't this like glut of on the side of like admin, like is
saying that, oh well, we can't hire more stable, like we can't deploy more stable tenure track professors because
they hire every year. They're constantly hiring.
They are.
System, until very recently, and it's as a result of the Ford government, and there's been a number of cutbacks and freezes, at least on the college side of things. But until recently, there was like growth every year on year. There was growth, but it is, as you're saying, they're not hiring into the stable positions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's my same experience going to like a private school for grad school in the States in Chicago. It was like just the same sort of out of hand and like case there, but it was like even more extreme. It kind of was like what OCAD could become, or like maybe OCAD's like in the sort of trajectory it's on, its like logical conclusion of like being this completely for-profit institute that just like squeezes money out of students, and then their best like employment opportunities is to just work at the same school that they attended as like sessional instructors that are just like scraping by on these really minimum contracts.
It's very Soylent Green.
Yes.
Something else also that I find striking about the language is I think follows out of the Berardi's notion of like financialization, like a turn towards finance culture. And finance culture is like a relatively recent economic creation, as far as I understand. I read some of Graeber's descriptions of economic history, and my eyes sort of cross, but this is what I gather. And you see it too. Well, for instance, humanities departments used to kind of follow their own flag in the sense that you would find your niche area of research and you would pursue it, and it didn't matter if it was like trying to parse contemporary films or launch cultural criticisms of fashion or whatever, discussing William Hazlitt and his day-to-day life. You would choose your niche and you'd pursue it, and the question of making money off that wouldn't enter into it. And here, and we've seen, and since the time that I was in university, it was already beginning, and people who were before me was saying it was much worse than it was. And now you see it continuing to worsen, where humanities departments, arts departments, STEMs, everything is reproducing the corporate organization, the orientation toward goals and outcomes in terms of like 5 and 10 and 20 year projections. The entire culture is being absorbed and reproduced by these bodies that have good reason to be independent of those things. Judging art for like its use is to fundamentally misunderstand it. Like thinking about the cultural production that is accomplished by somebody studying some dead old white man is to fundamentally misunderstand what is going on there. Even if there is like colonial questions and those sorts of things rolled into it, it just is a total misapprehension that seems to escape all of us.
What is it? There was a really excellent quote from the was it the bullshit creative jobs? Just like as the maybe John, do you have it up?
Yeah.
It's loading.
What describe?
I'll just describe with the advent of here we go. Oh no, now I have to find it. But the John, you have to cut this little part out and make it sound like I'm really on with all my links.
I have mine open with the things highlighted.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe like it begins with a paragraph of the creative industries. Okay.
Do you want to just read?
Yeah, I got
the story of the creative industries as a concept is well known. Its origin is usually identified as the British New Labour government's attempt to redefine itself as the party of post-industrial economic modernization, in which high technology, highly skilled workers, and information would play the key roles.
Of particular importance, the development of government interventions in the form of policy was the perceived spillover relationship between the core creative activities, specifically the creation of cultural expression in books, painting, films, plays, so on, and the industries of commercialization and reproduction, being publishers, galleries, museums, DVD distribution, etc., and the wider economy. This allowed the values and practices of commercial sectors increasingly to determine the organization and management of the cultural sector, with the market assuming a much greater proportion of the role of cultural commissioning and authority than had been the case previously, and a much greater role in management and regulation of productive capital in the forms of ideas and labor. So just thinking about that sort of transition to like giving more and more power to the people who have the middlemans who also are incentivized to ask the questions of like, is this art good or effective, or how can we measure the outcome, or like how can we measure the results of this art impacting people? It was just explained well.
Working at art school and working in the institution that we're working at now, you see, and in any art institution, whether it's a granting body or a museum or a gallery or a school, you see the two frameworks in which like the rest of our like society is operating within, which is like exponential growth and austerity, which like in art produces this sort of like insanity of like trying to make things means tested and trying to make things rubric goal oriented, while at the same time assuming and pushing towards growing year after year in some way, which is OCAD tries to we're doing some stuff on the admin side there. I know that they try to grow themselves year after year.
They try to get more and more student enrollment. Yeah. Without they've sort of acquired new buildings recently, but they're in, I think like one building's like entirely filled with just admin.
But there's this sort of like there is this all these strange Kafkaesque paradoxes of like, oh, because we are in this scarcity mindset, and because we're in the scarcity mindset, we have to go after growth, and we have to go after, if we want to, the place that we work at now, they talk about, oh, we need to do these things if we want to exist in 5 years, which fair enough, about being strategic. But at the same time, that is the material conditions, the base that informs what sort of activities your art organization, whatever it is going to be carrying out when you're living in that like austerity scarcity mindset.
It's
sorry, go
no,
for it.
No, you're on the roll. Go.
I was just like the idea that OCAD University has to continuously improve its enrollment, et cetera. It's so absurd when it's like it's literally an institution that's been around for like over 100 years, and it has evolved out of so many different kinds of formats. It's so the urgency to just adopt these new languages in order to sound relevant is so feels like very obviously like just. I don't know, whatever de rigueur maybe, just like, but it's silly. Anyway, you'll still be there, OCAD, even if you don't like squeeze 10 more people into each class and cut the teachers' salaries. But go for it, Ben.
I see like a similar shift that's happening in music. I think you can trace it in the switch from MP3 blogs to streaming services. I think you can, in particular, the coverage of emerging artists, where increasingly when you see outfits that do review, and there are of course exceptions, but a lot of especially a lot of the ones that have stayed the course, they're often short reviews that throw a number of familiar adjectives at you and talk about whether or not you should like acquire something, or it's not in so direct language, but this is the implication. They're often directly connected or in conversation with labels, and there's a decreasing emphasis on the find or discovery. And just as we saw previously in art, there's an emphasis toward curation, especially in playlists. So where an MP3 blog, it seems like the general thesis or the general motivation was, I want to discover something new, whether it's in my immediate community or my broader musical community, and I want to be the first to appreciate it, and then I want to share that appreciation with people. So it required kind of like an inquisitiveness and interpretive effort. And then contemporarily, playlists are curated toward moods and impressions and experience. And so you punch your mood into whatever the streaming service is, and then you get a curated playlist that you listen to passively. And then the activity becomes liking or not liking something. And then that entire interpretive layer, that layer of investigation or curiosity is stripped out, and I think it hurts the music economy because it reproduces class advantages in the shape of who can afford to make mistakes and learn and grow, and who can afford to go to different shows, afford the instruments and that sort of thing. And then there's the commercial gatekeeping, and then the inevitable class gatekeeping that happens in terms of who's financially interdicted. I think.
Yeah, it's going back to Bifo Berardi's. Yeah. Bifo Berardi's like his opinion of technology seems to ring true here as well, where in this, especially in the case of music here, the form, the mode of consumption is becoming more amenable to like an algorithmic mode, like the putting in things that are even more ambiguous than genre. That is like an easy, because genre can also often be difficult for an algorithm, and maybe mood might actually be easier for an algorithm to discern, because it's just about picking up major and minor, light or dark, these things that a computer can understand about music. And then what sort of forms of production does that do those algorithmic and streaming modes, what sort of production does it privilege? And I think we will see a similar thing happening to video games soon. And I think it plays in pretty nicely with the game that we're going to play today, which is an indie game called Sqool. And I think indie games right now, although indie games have existed for more in a mainstream way for more than a decade, they are still more so, although less than 10 years ago, but more like the MP3 blogs than they will be soon, because Apple and Google have just released one of them is Stadia. I think that's Google's or Apple. So they have not the Play Store.
No, but they're
what they are, they're streaming platforms for games. So it's like Netflix, but for video games. And I think we're going to see the same sort of transformation happen. There's this talk of the indie-pocalypse, and people think that Steam did the indie-pocalypse. So Steam is a video game downloading platform. It's where most people get most of their games. And it sort of has the same sort of like algorithmic strictures that you're talking about in music, Ben, that limit the sort of visibility, how much visibility you can get for your game. And that already made it harder for indies to get the word out. And it's only going to get harder. But Sqool is a game that's released. It's on Steam, but I bought it through Itch, which is sort of like the Bandcamp to Steam's iTunes store, meaning that it's free to host your stuff on Itch. And they have a very they had a very grassroots marketing campaign of, well, I don't know how grassroots it is, but they just used a striking visual and musical style of their game to get the attention of music blogs. Also, the creator, Julian Glander, is sort of like a hip artist.
That's a Twitter following and stuff. So
yeah, exactly.
Previously already had like an audience that he was able to tap into.
Yeah, totally. So that's sort of in that the MP3 blogs were this bit more of like a grassroots way to discover music. This is also representative of like a success on the grassroots level, which might be a thing that we don't see happen very much anymore in the future.
I wish that we would. We've discussed this. I want us to cover more of the itch games. I feel like for precisely political reason, it's kind of incumbent upon us to not be covering the people like Fadi and Kojima all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
Well, Fadi has like an art. Both Fadi and like Ian Chang, which we've covered. They have art. They have artistic relevance. But
totally.
Yeah, going forward, I think. Yeah, I mean, we'll just see what we pull out of our sleeve.
Well, Itch represents like a sort of. It represents part of the indie-pocalypse, which is like it's a very contentious term in video game developer circles, because like people are like, oh, it's bad, like you can't make money off of games anymore, and then other people are, well, it's just the same as it's always been. There's always been these barriers and gates and gatekeepers. But anyway, another aspect of the indie-pocalypse is the increasing availability of the tools to create video games, like the game engines Unreal and Unity, which Unity is the game engine that Julian Glander used to make Sqool, because it's becoming easier and easier for people to make video games. And because increasingly, like the BFA Berardi quote you read, Ben, people want to become artists. This is being an artist who creates video games, as we have the path that we have chosen as well, is becoming like one of the most accessible ways to create something that is like, to a certain degree, contemporary and relevant. And so it's created this explosion of supply in terms of what's available on Itch. It's quite bewildering how much stuff there is on there. So that's one challenge in approaching it critically.
I think you, and I'm only underscoring here, but it's not, so it's like the allure and temptation of the platform, and it's the means of production. So the many to many broadcasting, and the relative accessibility of creative technologies that seem to bring these things into like within reach for. It doesn't, like, it's the same for video, it's the same for music, it's the same for video games. There's a lot of things that are much more accessible as a result of this.
If we can attain the social means to continue to reproduce our lives and not have to suffer under the yoke of capitalism, then I would like to see art making, whether it's video games, movies, music, furniture, whatever sort of art you make, return to a more arts and crafts mentality of like making art for your friends, making art for your community, not making art to be famous, just making art for the context you live in to be enjoyed by the people who care about it. And that would allow everyone to be an artist, and it would allow for a platform with as many, with as much multiplicity as itch.io has to exist. But we need something like a basic income or something better than that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Ben froze with that statement. You might have blown his mind.
Yes!
Yeah, something's broken.
Ben's gone.
Then literally it just exploded.
Ben's back.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You missed John's mic drop.
Well, you got it recorded, so if it's any good, we can keep it in. I'll just be pensive. I'll put a sample that indicates some Foley that indicates I'm being pensively silent. I've been really fascinated with Pauline Oliveros for like a range of reasons, and one of the things that I like about her is she doesn't really want to spend a lot of time thinking about who's a musician and who's not. And it's not like this self-affirming thing of everybody's a musician, although this is the sort of language she would use, but I don't think it's quite intended in that way. I think it's just kind of like, we can all do it. But what I also find interesting about her is she's a master. And I find that like this romantic, what's his name? Morris arts and crafts idea.
Oh yeah, the William Morris, yeah.
Alluring. But on the other hand, I would miss those occasions of mastery. And I don't know that it necessarily, and we have to choose one or the other, but the oversubscription to cultural production, as it's termed in the article, seems less to produce dialogue with tradition and more a kind of like post-globalization monochrome, and that's why I would be resistant to, like, I think the means of production being in everyone's hands, fuck yeah. Is the platform standing up to what it holding up its end of the bargain, where anybody can put their placard out on the front of their building and come check out my wares? Or is it again somehow being gatekept in ways much, much more mysterious and much, much less clear? Even when you hear professionals talking about Spotify, they're like, well, we think it works this way. We don't entirely know. But I think you're talking about a fantastic para-internet universe as opposed to like dropping the conditions of a universal creative impulse into a contemporary zeitgeist.
Yeah, totally. This is what I'm hoping for.
Trial.
Just what we'll all do once we don't have to toil anymore.
Fully automated luxury communism. Here we come.
Mm-hmm.
Trial.
Do you want to play Art Sqool?
Fuck yeah.
On that note.
Okay. Kat, you should take the reins.
But let's clap in the sound so we can align it.
Yeah, sounds good. Yes, it's not. I guess so. We can align different. Yes. Okay. Cool. Clapping. 3, 2, 1.
Nice. Let's get this.
Kat,
I think we have to switch spots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now everybody's going to get to see exactly how
Transition music.
Kat does all the graphics for.
Here, you can sit here.
But I get the transition music. Continue the transition music.
Now, Kat, everybody's going to get to see behind the curtain and get a look at how you do all the graphics for the various spec work projects.
Yes, it's true. Yeah, I don't know how we can protect my IP.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
Yeah, overwrite save progress.
Okay, art school.
Art school. Is it just like the real thing?
So it starts off. You just have to click. It starts off. You're looking at this weird cue with a bunch of colorful noise in the background. The cue has 2 eyes and he's talking to you. He's welcoming you into your art school. Hello, Froshman. Welcome to art school. My name is Professor Quertz. QWERTZ. I'm an advanced neural network trained on over 100,000 teraflops of the greatest art in the world. I will be your faculty advisor this semester. My job is to analyze your work against my vast database and give you constructive feedback. I was made by scientists, so I am really good at this. Oh, don't worry. It sounds technical, but art school is really simple once you get the hang of it. That is true. Just use your drawing pad to complete the assignments I give to you. The art school campus is here to inspire you. It is loaded with some really beautiful scenery. Well, I'm sure you're eager to get started. Loading assignment generator.
Man, I think that even threaded into this like preamble is like jokes about artificial intelligence and the incontrovertibility of algorithmic thinking.
Yeah. It must be true because he was made by scientists.
Mm-hmm. I've just received my first prompts from art school. Draw something you've heard of but never seen. When you've completed the assignment, return to my office for critique. Good luck, Froshman, and once again, welcome to art school.
Okay, everyone be quiet while they play the intro song.
The song's really good.
Trial.
Great.
Can you hear it?
Trial. Trial.
Okay, so that song is really, it was in the trailer for this game, and it really started the buzz for it in a big way. So the game starts, and you're this cute little blue character. It's
with the same haircut I have right
now. With the bowl haircut
and glasses.
And you're in this very androgynous. You're in this very like sort of MS Paint post-internet glitchy world / campus. You're moving. It's a third-person view. You can see your body, but also on the screen is a drawing pad, and it's sort of like just a pop-out window. Looks very sort of like old school
Photoshop.
Yeah, old school Photoshop. Yeah, exactly. Kat just collected her first color swatch. And so the sort of coolest innovation of this game is that you gather more artist materials as you go on in the game. So you start off with just a blue color swatch. And so you can just sort of like...
just a black color swatch.
I see.
I just found the blue one.
Okay, great. So but all you do is you can draw lines. And sort of as time goes on, you get more tools that are, again, like the like the Photoshop basic tools, like the spray paintbrush or the
rainbow. There's a rainbow one.
Rainbow tool. And so the goal of the game is just sort of wander around the campus and find things to draw to complete the assignments for your neural network professor.
I smashed.
What are the controls, like WASD?
Yeah, just WASD and spacebar for jump.
Not even mouse.
Yeah,
just the
which
mouse.
is really annoying because as you can see, like...
I wondered what was happening.
Yeah, that's why I'm like overcompensating at each so much. Oh yes, look, I found something else. Okay. Hopefully I'll be able to walk straight.
It's interesting how literal symbolism tends to be in video games. And I wonder...
I just fell off the world.
Oh, that looks like a John death. That looks like Death John program.
Oh no, so I didn't actually... When you fall off the edge of the world, you hand in your assignment.
And then the professor, because she had a blank page, the professor gave her an assignment not complete.
Yeah,
so
I
she
have
has
to
to go
redo.
and try again.
Okay, so how about before I accidentally fall off, I'll draw something.
Yeah.
Something I've heard of but never seen. Ooh, I like this brush. I'm gonna go for like.
You've seen pubic hair.
One of the things, so this game had sort of mixed reviews upon release. It's pretty liked by critics, but on Steam especially, a lot of people...
Kat's writing, what? Ethical what? I thought she was just going to write ethics.
Ethical.
Consent?
Oh, this is very funny.
Ethical
so
consumption.
The prompt is draw something you've heard of but never seen, and Kat drew some pubes and wrote ethical consumerism.
Oh yeah, I miss the ism here.
I miss the ism. So yeah, people, some of the consumers of this game on Steam were unhappy that it's not a real artificial intelligence that's grading your assignments.
Yeah, how could they lie to us like that?
You get, so your assignments, Kat, if you want to turn in this assignment now,
I guess I could.
Your assignments are just randomly graded by by Quartz, the neural network.
Maybe I can get over here.
And that sort of peeved some people because they wanted a real neural network. But other reviewers they liked that more because it sort of invokes the absurdity of art school grades. So Kat got a B.
I got a B,
on this project,
which is pretty good. Yeah, it also it's kind of like the whole world, like you're walking around supposedly on campus, but you're entirely alone, and then you're like handing in your work to this professor who grades it randomly without. Oh, whoops! I just disappeared. Oh, I'm gonna get another fail. It's like. As far as like symbolizing the subjectivity and the kind of like absurdity of this institutionalized aesthetic judgment, it's apt. It's an apt like mechanic to just have this AI to say a random grade at the end of it. But now I'm busy looking for more cool stuff.
So the next prompt is draw the most famous person you can think of.
There should probably be a new brush or something in this new level that I just got access to.
And it's also sort of funny that the main sort of mechanic of the game is just gathering new materials to make art with.
But also funny, there's just nobody here, which is the best part of art school, really. If you like,
was the friends you made along the way?
Was the friends I made along the way?
That's like the most sentimental thing I think I've ever heard you say. And it wasn't that sentimental.
It has nothing. Art school, it's not about all the cool brushes and weird shit you pick up. It's the friends you make along the way.
I guess that's what I was kind of getting at in terms of the materiality, like collecting stuff. That seems to like I do feel like a video game outsider, like basically post scroller, and it seems like so much is just based on like objects, moving objects, collecting objects.
Oh, yeah. I think I found something.
What do you mean by post scroller? Like post
after
like
Mario, after Sonic. Like that's when I put in the real hours. Apart from getting into like a few phone games here and there and like picking up some things with friends. And I've played a lot of different games, but like I'm talking about putting in my 10,000 hours. That was and it's an abstraction that feels alienating to me because I'm not kind of christened into that idiom, I think.
Well, yeah,
I'm at the end of a James Turrell right now, I think.
We've talked about talked about like a criticism of games, or a common criticism of many games is that they're just content delivery mechanisms where there's no sort of like meaningful interactions happening. You're just navigating a 3D environment and trying to find things, which it does. Like, it's the easiest thing to do using the tools is to just create, put things in a space that the player can move within. So it makes sense that is what we see the most often, is these sort of like collection routines. Because it doesn't require mechanic design or interaction design.
It's just, I'm trying to like make the analogy across. I guess writing is kind of like that. Like, I'm trying to make the analogy across other emergent forms and thinking about like early video work from Fluxus or like early forays into electronic music. And some of the stuff, like a lot of the stuff that is canonized anyway, and I guess maybe there I'm already answering my own question. But a lot of the experiments or the kind of like near misses in video games they leave me feeling really hollow in terms of content. It seems to be it seems to be very literal and so much to emphasize form. Like aesthetically, this is a very beautiful game, but it doesn't. There's no the content seems to like it does nothing for me. And do you think my expectations are too high, or I'm just being like needlessly critical, or?
No, I think part of it is just the part of it is the economic conditions in which this game are produced, where it's made by a single person, so they need to work in sort of like the most economically efficient way that they can for them, which means that it's just sort of like this. There's just this one thing you can do, which is drawing pictures on your
say draw the most famous person you can think of. I drew Mario and I got an A.
A very like I knew it was Mario. Even I don't even think I needed the M on the hat. The hat's the best part.
Sorry, Jonathan. Continue. I just have to brag about my assignment grade.
Draw one of the massive, extremely expensive sculptures that dot the art school campuses.
Ooh, wow.
Do the doggy head, if you can still see it.
Where did it go?
This is maybe a different level, is there?
Yeah, I think this must be the sculpture garden.
It's just that I think there's you want to release things as soon as possible when you're designing a game, and there's so many. Every feature that you add to a game sort of increases the time that it will take to produce it. Seems like exponentially, or like to an exponential degree rather than to a linear degree. If you want if you want to have like 3 different mechanics in the game, it won't just take 3 times as long. Yeah, totally. And so I think that means then also because you need to make money, especially as an independent developer like this guy is working alone, you want to get something out as soon as possible, especially because he had a pretty good market. I think the marketing campaign was pretty good.
When it came out, or the video came out, I was really excited. Ooh, I see a new paintbrush. I
was hyped about it.
I was hyped. I loved the song, and then when we got the game, and then the thick brush. Found the thick brush. So when we got the game, and it played the exact same audio as the Oh, that's beautiful. As the other one, like, or as the commercial rather, like, and there was no added there's no added lyrics. It was very. I'd seen everything I'd already seen in the commercial.
It also looks
Trial.
like it's stupid of me to say, but like it looks worse than the trailer because the trailer is made in some actual like 3D rendering engine, so it looks fancy, whereas this is just being rendered by Unity, so things look more sort of like default. So it doesn't even look as nice as the trailer, which is what that's a stupid thing to say, but whatever. And
I mean, remember we're talking about art school and the institutionalized aesthetic appreciation of things, like that should look as good as the trailer.
That is just to say there's a lot of incentive to just release something so that you can like make a little bit of money to sustain yourself, which is awesome that this guy has been able to. Like, I think it's very reasonable. I'd say totally worth it for the $10 or whatever that you pay for it. I think it's cute.
I like it.
And it is like sort of engaging with an art piece, but also it's unfortunate that we have to like work within the strictures of the society that we have to work in, where if you have to release, I'm sure knowing the way that like artists who work in game design think.
Whoa, I can like.
I'm sure that he would have liked to work on this for longer and put some more stuff in, but
it's so interesting. We're definitely encountering that with Resource, where we have kind of got it to a point where we're like, okay, this is showable, but in order to finish it, we're going to need a major infusion, and you kind of have to show something that you're not entirely happy with.
Yeah.
Trial.
Yeah, so I can totally relate with that sort of feeling of like that a lot of these games feel a bit superficial.
Yeah.
Caddy's lost in the static.
I tried to move my way through.
Do you want to see what sort of grade you get on this sculpture?
But I want to make it to like one of these like weird little parts, which probably.
But it's a weird excuse that you make for video games, because when somebody writes a novel, they also need to eat. When somebody makes a record, they also need to eat. So they're. Again, it's this Berardi thing, and now I'm just like engaging with it on a superstitious level. But like, is there something about the technological aspect of it that makes it a more potent capitalist instrument?
That is indeed true. But then also, it's just the quality of the like. It's the quality of like the multidisciplinarity of video game making, where you really do need a team of people to be working on something, because every aspect of it is so complicated, and then the general like that sort of like multiplying of the complexity, where like you need all these different parts to work, and then they all work together, and then this creates a level of complexity that is like just, I think, quite difficult for an individual. That's why successful games made by individuals, the best example I can think of is Stardew Valley. That's an extremely successful game made by a single person that is like amazingly engaging to play, but it took that guy like 6 years of work, and he was completely supported by his partner the whole time that he was just like sitting at home, and multiple like crushing battles with depression, like just normal artist shit. But
I want to play that game now.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
I remember you guys playing it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, we had. Oh yeah, we were playing it in Berlin
instead of going out to clubs. But that, I mean, it. But your point remains, Ben, that it takes. How long does it take to write a novel?
Yeah.
A long freaking time.
And that's like, I remember once. An athletic banquet at school, so I played sports, and then I also was like kind of like obsessively interested in writing, and I would hang out a lot in the library in the English department, and kind of like drunkenly after this athletic banquet stumbling into the English department and talking to a creative writing professor who I respected, and asking him point blank, like, what does one do to become a writer? And he says, you marry a wealthy woman.
A wealthy woman.
Well, he was being heteronormative, but I mean, it sounds like this is also how you make Stardew Valley.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. But I guess it is the other part of what you were saying, Ben, of there being something specific that makes video games a specifically potent capitalist tool is this sort of thing of like, oh, it's quite easy to sell them to make $10 and a sale or whatever. And then also it's you can really like marketing it. There's this like art of marketing it that you can be quite good at, and maybe that is like you could that can be one of the many multivalency of like different activities that go into video game making. That's one of them, and so maybe that's one that you're really good at, so you want to get to that part as soon as possible, marketing the video game.
I mean, I feel like my bullshit job as a creative producer is like all the platform shit, and then I take pleasure on certain social media platforms, but thinking specifically about streaming platforms, having to create those profiles and having to think about how you brand yourself and having to think about release schedules and having to think about all of these things, which it's all well and good. I mean, if you want to commit to career direction, then this is what one does, but it all feels a bit kind of like a lot of that work I end up doing as one who feels it is a bullshit job and it impacts the result. Like Graeber's analogy in the bullshit jobs article is it's as if everybody's been hired to make furniture, and part of that job is frying fish. I feel like promoting my music and trying to like get it placed in blogs and podcasts and playlists is like the frying fish, and I'm in a room full of frying fish and never making the furniture, or making the furniture much less than I would like to.
Yeah,
and no one wants
to fry so much fish.
No one wants to spend any time with you because you smell awful, fishy.
Exactly. Well, I mean, somehow, like the people who I end up being most interested in would kind of like turn their nose up at the fish smell a little bit, being like, okay, man, like, yeah, we get it. You put an album out. Could you stop cluttering our feeds with that? You know?
I'm just frying some fish here. What do you want me to do? It's in the job description.
Well, pivoting back to Oliveros, this is my compulsion for the week. Is she taught, because she went to school with Terry Riley and Steve Reich.
Oh yeah.
And she kind of went through a long period of anonymity after like a kind of like bright start. And she said, I just went into the woods and I just wanted to work, and they wanted to work, but they also wanted acknowledgement for their work. And she says that's the big difference. Then I mean, happily, end of the day, Oliveros is recognized and acknowledged for being the forebearer that she is, and for her work. But you know, there was a dodgy minute when she might not have been picked up in that way. It does seem that part of canon is about a good part of canon. A major part of canon is that self-marketing thing.
Yeah. A lot of it is, and like it's the through line for artists thus far in human history is like sort of somehow seeking patronage.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of like common denominator between all the fish frying, is that it's all some form of seeking patronage. Yeah, whether from the church or the aristocracy or your Patreon.
Or relative leisure class jobs. I mean, we say this, but like, you know, Comrade Marx was like living in poverty. But a lot of people had kind of like banker's hours jobs or clerical work, like professional class jobs that would enable them, like early writers, I mean.
Conrad Marx?
Comrade.
Oh, I thought you were doing another libertine thing.
Yeah, Conrad Black.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he's part of the creative class now. He's just an opinion piece writer.
Yeah, exactly. He's like the Floridian exemplar.
A man of letters.
Whoa, Cat. Man. Really? Cat got a B, man. It's because you drew a vagina and they're sexist.
I gotta be last time too for my butt joke, which I in real art school I got an A grade for my butt joke. So I don't think this is very realistic.
Not very authentic.
Yeah. What are you afraid of? Why?
Well, that's the other thing that I find interesting, especially about your aesthetic as a programmer, John, and then the compulsion that you have to make video games. That and I think Kat brings a lot of like finish and formal consideration to the design element. But I do think that in a certain sense, you have like a lo-fi aesthetic that in the context of like resisting a market valuation, like it has like a kind of punk ethos that I don't see that happening. I mean, Foddy kind of does it, but it does that. Maybe that's also a way that video games as a technology is resistant to, is a more honed capitalist instrument.
Yeah, even the punk people are sort of like have ideas about marketing. It's like that is an important part of the medium for everyone who's involved with it. It's like how to get the word out about your stuff.
I got stuck in a billboard.
Good time to close it, I think.
Yeah. This depressing conversation.
It really says a lot about society when you think about it.
What am I afraid of? Death in the billboard.
Death by long defilement. Plugs. I was at the Brandscape last night for this close listening thing, and it's really filling up, like authentically, not just a marketing ploy. There are still hot desks left, and I think possibly Ian could be talked out of ditching his mega studio if somebody was interested in it. We never say, but we should say it's also available for event rentals and for photo shoots. As a rehearsal space.
There's a Sqool wall that's currently white.
Yeah, the two greatest things that I've done in my life so far are the Sqool wall that we built there, and then the shower that we built there.
Man, I thought you were going to leave the shower out, because the shower I'm impressed by. It's janky as fuck, but it's impressive.
There was a toilet, and then we turned the toilet into a shower.
But the stankiness has nothing to do. That used to be a toilet. That I don't think.
No, just we don't clean it. Yeah. So, but anytime you want to take a shower or take a photo shoot, we've got you covered.
And if you want to do both, also covered.
Totally. Totally. And we have a special. We have a special night coming up here in Regina at the Mackenzie Art Gallery on the 5th of December. We're hosting an Artcade event. So that's going to be sort of the starting of some more programming that we're doing there. But you'll be able to play a bunch of the projects that we talk about on this podcast.
That's cool.
The ones we make, not the ones we play here. But
yeah.
That's exciting.
Any Saskatchewan heads turn up.
Saskatchewanians, I think they're called.
Okay.
Saskatchewanians.
I'm going to put some John Cage here on the end that I think is appropriate to this.
433?
No. But something from the indeterminacy, but something that's relevant, I think, here.
Wunderbar.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Bye.
Artists talk a lot about freedom.